Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today's topic is a little bit different, where today we'll be discussing the top 5 race packs we may never see in the Total War Warhammer series. So without further ado, let's begin. The Total War Warhammer series is absolutely massive. We're currently in the second game of the series, with a third being in development as we speak. Many unique races and factions have been implemented, and it's safe to assume that there are still a few more to come. Unfortunately, however, with the Warhammer Fantasy universe being so massive, there is a chance that not all unique races will be featured as their own respective race packs in Total War Warhammer. This could be for a number of reasons, such as not having enough lore or established models to build a basic framework, Creative Assembly or Games Workshop might not have any interest in having these races created as they might not be very profitable, or they could have been retconned out of the lore long ago, such as the Sea Elves were, which were another sub-race of elves. So with that, we've looked at all the remaining races in the Warhammer Fantasy world and have compiled this list down to the top 5, which we believe will not feature in their own respective race packs. For our 5th spot, we have the Halflings, a race of short humanoids with a passion for food and thievery. A minor race based on J.R.R. Tolkien's works, they've always been considered a comic relief type of race. Never really taken too seriously for obvious reasons, such as having sheep riders as cavalry or swan riders. Their basic swarm units consisted of chicken, geese and turkeys, among other things, and one of their forms of artillery was essentially strapping a hot pot to a giant sling. Nonetheless, despite their silly nature, the Halflings were much loved by the Warhammer Fantasy fans. And in truth, they do have a decent amount of lore and background, with their own capital known as the Moot, their own pantheon and their own standing armies. But if they have so much, why would the Halflings not have their own race pack? The answer is fairly simple. Despite the fact that the Halflings have so much background that could justify a race pack, the majority of the Halflings that live in the Warhammer Fantasy world live within a province known as the Moot, which is actually a part of the Empire. All other Halflings that don't live within the Moots generally live around the other reaches of the Old World, but most are found within the borders of the Empire. The Halflings, or at least the majority of them, are seen as citizens of the Empire. Now, also taking into account that their standing armies are not that strong, they wouldn't really present to be a viable force. The Halfling armies are mostly known for their scouts and their archers more than anything, and considering the fact that the Moot is so close to Sylvania, they'd probably get destroyed very early on. The Halflings also do not have many bases of operations, mostly being seen in the Moot or within the Empire, so it is very likely that we won't see a race pack which normally requires 4 different start positions and 4 different legendary lords for the Halflings. Now, with all that being said, it's still very likely that we could see playable Halflings in the Total War Warhammer series, just not as their own respective race. Where instead we could see the Halflings join up with the Empire as they're supposed to be via a Lord pack. Nothing too big, but at the very least it would feature at least a legendary lord or 2, a new start position within the Moot, and maybe some iconic units such as the Halfling Archers, some basic militia, the Halfling Hotpot, and maybe some Rooster Riders too. Nothing too big, but at least they'll be represented in Total War Warhammer, and it could be possible that they'll get an electoral seat in the Empire. Just imagine being able to start your Empire campaign as a Halfling, and then making him the Emperor. Moving on to our 4th spot, we have the Kurgans. The Kurgans are one of many northern races of men. Unfortunately, they've never really seen too much of a spotlight in the Warhammer Fantasy universe, and thus get confused with the Norskans very easily. However, while they are very similar in terms of faith, where they both worship the Chaos Gods, they are 2 completely different races of human. The men of Norska live in the frozen lands of Norska, as you can imagine. They have been known to build great halls and make use of ships to raid coastal regions, whereas the Kurgans themselves are mostly nomadic, and they are famous for their cavalry-heavy tactics. While the Kurgans themselves are very unique in terms of aesthetic, culture and so on, it's more than likely that we won't see them as their own specific race pack, mainly because the faction itself is known to be nomadic as stated before, which would mean that they would be another Horde faction, and seeing that we already have 2 Hordes in the Forces of Chaos, those being the Warriors of Chaos themselves and the Beastmen, it's more than likely we won't see them as their own race. However, it is still very important to note that it's still very likely that we'll see some sort of Kurgans in Total War Warhammer, specifically for the Warriors of Chaos. The first being Crom the Conqueror, a famed warlord of the Kurgan lines, who united the various warring tribes and pledged himself and his forces to Archaon the Everchosen. And lastly, Tamukan, a great devotee of Nurgle who claims to be a descendant from the great Kurgan himself. He himself amassed a mighty horde and came close to shattering the Empire. Both these choices, among some others, would make great additions to the Warriors of Chaos. Sure, we'd be missing out on another faction, but at the end of the day, if it's going to be a horde faction and hordes are still pretty broken, I think it's just better if they move those towards an already established one. For our third spot, we have the Hobgoblin Empire, also known as the Hobgoblin Khanate. Now, whilst most other people see this as just another greenskin faction, and in truth they pretty much are, the Hobgoblins are a bit different. They are larger than the average goblin, generally more keen to get into close combat, and are generally more competent in typical hit-and-run tactics. Now, despite the fact that they are so distinct from their greenskin cousins, there is a big reason as to why many believe that the Hobgoblins will not feature as their own race pack. That being that many Hobgoblins serve as slaves to the Chaos Dwarves, and with the very high likely chance that we're going to see playable Chaos Dwarves in Total War Warhammer 3, it can be expected that we'll see a decent amount of Hobgoblin units in that army roster already. So it would be rather disappointing if a new race pack came out with the Hobgoblins and most of their army has already been featured somewhere else. Moving on to our second spot, we have the Snakemen of Koresh. The Snakemen are an interesting oddity. While they have been mentioned briefly over a number of different editions, unfortunately there is very little lore to the Snakemen and their rulers the Blood Naga, where it can even be said that the isolationist nation of Nippon, who can be considered a footnote in Warhammer Fantasy itself, has more lore than the Snakemen. Unfortunately, there's not really much that we can cover through here. They had some models way back in the day, and I think they also had a Blood Bowl team, but that's pretty much it. It is really important to note that the Warhammer Fantasy world was built to be very vast, but unfortunately many of the races established in the lore didn't get any love whatsoever, or very minor bits at the very least, where they saw some models and that's pretty much it. We never know in the future, however, considering that Games Workshop are working on a new game called Warhammer the Old World, which is a return to Warhammer Fantasy, and some races, such as the Snakemen, might get their time under the spotlight, meaning that there is a chance that they will see DLC for Total War Warhammer, but until then, we will never know. And finally, we're at our first and final slot, which is the Amazons. These are ancient warrior women that dwell within the deep dark jungles of Lustria. They have a decent amount of lore, standing armies, pantheons, pretty much anything you need to start the basic of a new faction. Unfortunately, however, it is almost definite that we won't see the Amazons as a playable race, purely because we are almost near the end of the lifespan of Total War Warhammer 2, and seeing as the third game is looking to take part very far away from Lustria, it's more than likely that we won't see this race. It's a shame, really. The Amazons were a culture that was never really explored too much in the Warhammer Fantasy universe, and they would have been visually distinct enough to at least break up the monotony of seeing so many lizards in Lustria. But as with all minor factions, there's not really that much lore. There is some basic knowledge in regards to their standing armies with warrior women, jaguar warriors and so on, but even then it's still very vague. But these were our top 5 races that may not get their own respective race packs. We are going to cover 2 more, however, which are almost definitely never going to be featured in the Total War Warhammer series or in Warhammer the Old World. First up would be the Fishmen. Yep, we're going to talk about the meme. So the Fishmen are one of these races which were mentioned once or twice in the lore and became a meme way back in the day of, I think, Warhammer 1st edition, and has continued to be a meme all the way past the end times. It's absolutely funny to see this. I speak to a few old Hammer players who were there since the very beginning, and they find it hilarious that this is still a thing. I mean, they could surprise us and show at least 1 or 2 Fishmen concept arts, but honestly, don't think of them as ever coming in, either as a playable unit or as a race altogether. And lastly, this is another one that is definitely never appearing in the Total War Warhammer series, or ever coming back into Warhammer the Old World, that of the Pygmies. Now, an interesting fact about the Pygmies is they have their own armies, they have their own established lore, even having a decent sized amount of models for Warhammer 2nd edition, which didn't have that many models to begin with. After which they disappeared from the lore, but then once again returned in Warhammer 6th edition, just in a few mentions here and there. This is a definite that we won't see this implemented as a playable faction or race, which is a shame in terms of lore, however, considering the fact that the Pygmies actually have a lot more lore compared to, for example, Nippon or Koresh. Even if there was a slight chance that these guys would be added in, unfortunately they're also based in Lustria, and we are nearing the end of the timeline for Game 2. which is also being confirmed that we're not going to be seeing any new race packs for Total War Warhammer 2, so any factions such as the Amazons, Pygmies and so on will not be featured. But those were our bonus picks to the top 5. What do you guys think about our original top 5 and these 2 bonus picks? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's start a discussion. Do you think these races do have a chance at the end as their own respective race packs? Or maybe being implemented as a minor Lord pack for another established race already, with maybe 2 or 3 units to accompany a Lord. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below, we have various different social media links such as Facebook, Instagram and Discord, where you can get in contact with the Great Book team. Also in the description section, we have an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Purchasing using this link and also using our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Their support means the world to us. Honestly, it's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to our patrons Gibraltar, LUSC and Ryan Bertsche for subscribing to us at our Fane level. Honestly, you guys are super cool. And a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing and commenting on these videos. The channel's been growing a lot lately and it's all thanks to you guys. Without you guys, the Great Book of Grudges would be nothing, so for that, we can't thank you enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.